This is the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
I have a note here from Hazel. She's listening in Milwaukee. Thank you, Hazel. She says, I've been hearing a lot about a prophecy of St. Malachy surrounding a new pope, which states that he is the last pope before the end of the world. I want to hear your take on this. Thank you. Yeah, Hazel, no problem. This has been around for a long time, and I've been answering this question for a long time, going back, probably close to 40 years. And the prophecies of St. Malachy are not approved by the Catholic Church, and we don't even know if really they're even authentic. Some people think they are authentic, and there are some things about them that seem noteworthy and startling in some cases. But it's also very possible that this is not something that is authentic. I first became aware of these prophecies when I was a teenager back in the early 1970s. But as far as your question is concerned about the so-called last pope, it really centers on the last several descriptions. The claim is that he was an Irish bishop. He went to Rome, and either on the way there or on the way back, or maybe while he was there, he had this vision in which he was shown all the popes that would exist from his time, back in the 1100s, until the end of the world. So, is this real or is it not real? Well, I don't claim to know, but if I had to lean in one direction or the other, I would probably lean in the direction that it's not authentic. But here's what has people's attention. So you have a description for each of the popes. Most of the descriptions are very enigmatic, and it's not really clear what it's referring to. But it's a way of describing each of the popes until the very last one, and I'll tell you what the last several are. So you have angelic shepherd. That's the phrase that's given. And people say, oh, that's, Pope Pius XII, because he was known as the angelic shepherd, or maybe he became known as that because of this. Then you have shepherd and sailor, pastor et nauta, and that's in Latin, and that's how it was originally written. So they say, oh, that's got to be Pope John the 23rd, because he was the Patriarch of Venice. And if you're in Venice, you're on a boat going from one place to another. So he was a shepherd and a sailor. Look at that. And then Paul VI was a flower of flowers. And they say, oh, look, he had the fleur-de-lis on his coat of arms, the stylized French version of the lily. That means he has to be this one. And then the next one was de medietate lunae, and that means of the half moon. Oh, look, that's got to be Pope John Paul I, because he was only Pope for 33 days. You really can't fit the half moon there unless you were to say it went from when the moon was half full one month until the same time the next month. I suppose it could be that. And then the next one was de laboris solis. And in Latin, that means of the labor of the sun, or from the labor of the sun, whatever that may mean. People have said, well, that must be John Paul II because of the miracle at Fatima and the way in which Our Lady at Fatima played such a significant role in his pontificate. Okay, then we get to Gloria Olivae, which is the glory of the olive. And people say, well, that's got to be Pope Benedict, because the olive, or the Olivetans, were the term that was known, or as the Benedictines were known at that time. Who's the progenitor of the Benedictine order? Pope, well, St. Benedict. And isn't it interesting that Pope Benedict, Cardinal Ratzinger, chose the name Benedict? So that must mean that he is Gloria Olivae, glory of the olive. And again, the connection here would be that a pope that would choose the name Benedict would be giving glory or honor in some sense to the order of the Benedictines. Well, then comes the last one in the list, is 112 total, and in this one it's Petrus Romanus. Now that's the name, but it's a much longer caption. And in English it says, Peter the Roman, who will pasture his sheep in many tribulations. And when these things are finished, the city of 7 hills, in other words, Rome, will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people. The end. That's how it concludes. So the concern that people have is that, this must be the last pope. So the difficulty, if we interpret it along those lines, is Pope Francis intervened after Gloria Olivae, so after Pope Benedict XVI. Now we have Pope Leo the 14th. So how does this fit? I mean, does this work? Well, before Pope Leo the 14th, people thought, well, that must mean then that Pope Francis is the last pope. And he clearly wasn't, because we now have a new pope. And in due time, who knows how many of us will be alive to see this happen, but if in due time, when in due time, Pope Leo the 14th passes on to his eternal reward, there will be another pope, presumably. So you have to evaluate this both in terms of the enigmatic character of these quatrains or these mottos, but at the same time, keep in mind that it doesn't seem to be playing out. I wouldn't worry about these things or fret over them. Some people make a huge deal out of these things, and we just don't know. So trust in the Lord. If there's any authenticity to it, it's hard to say. It'll play out in the end. And knowing one way or the other is not going to change anything. So my advice would be just keep your eyes on Jesus, be a good Catholic, love God with all your heart, mind, and strength, give alms to the poor, love your neighbor as yourself, go to Mass, receive the sacraments, pray the rosary, read the Bible, all the things that you are called to do, just do those things. And whether there's any truth whatsoever to the so-called prophecies of St. Malachi, in due time you'll find out. Or in the meantime, you go to heaven and you can be up there with some popcorn watching as everything unfolds here. Either way, it's going to be okay. So I wouldn't put any real concern or stock in that for that reason. I hope that's helpful. Thank you. Like what you just heard? Share it with your family and friends. And thanks for listening.